Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everybody is safe and sound. We welcome you all to SCM Pro Forum's webinar themed Driving Operational Efficiencies in Procurement. Industry leaders today from FMCG, CPG industry will discuss the challenge facing procurement and how firms can safely navigate the perfect storm, creating operational efficiencies in the process. So I would like to thank all the speakers who are going to join us today for sparing time and being here for the discussion. I would also like to thank Procol for their support to the webinar. So once again, we welcome everybody and thanks Procol for your support to the webinar. Let me go ahead and invite our speakers for the discussion today. So we have with us Archana, Procurement and Hub Leader India from Modelez, India. Radha Mohan, Regional Procurement Director, South Asia from Reckitt Benckiser. Shom, Head of Procurement and Logistics at ITC Limited. Tarun, Head of Procurement Operations at Kellogg's. Manmeet, Head of Procurement and Milk Sourcing at Nestle India. Gaurav Baheti, Founder and CEO at Procol. Girish V.S., Director Education, Institute of Supply Chain Management. Welcome you all and thank you for being here. I would request Girish to kindly take up the discussion further and request all the attendees to keep sending us your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessel. And a warm welcome to all the attendees in today's webinar. I also welcome all the speakers. The trends shaping business environment during the past decade have created opportunities for procurement to enhance a company's overall performance. And management have become dynamic and complex. Add to that, the COVID-19 pandemic has put an enormous strain on global supply chains, at times halting manufacturing while shutting down airports and seaports, interrupting delivery of raw materials and finished goods. The first phase, we saw a different impact, and in phase two, the impact has been very different on businesses and on logistics and the human toll itself. At the pandemic's onset, in the first phase, procurement departments switched to crisis management mode to help companies alleviate disruptions, including sourcing personal protective gear for employees and helping smaller suppliers manage their cash flow. However, in this environment, even excellence in traditional core activities is no longer enough. Procurement must be able to anticipate and address challenges in dynamic supply markets as well. To succeed, procurement executives will need to work closely with business partners to make decisions with a cross-functional end-to-end perspective along the supply chain. As a very strategic function, we need to adopt an integrated approach. In addition to all that we spoke about, digital technologies are revolutionizing the procurement function. Major improvements in cost and performance of computing power, combined with emerging technologies like blockchain, have created a whole new playing field. Amidst all these changes that is happening within the procurement function, building operational efficiencies requires much more than just automating a few processes. It requires a holistic approach combining strategy, technology, and sustainability goals. Today, we will be discussing the issues and challenges in enhancing operational efficiencies in procurement in the background of technology, cost, and building up a new procurement function. The discussion will be a free-flow format. However, for the sake of our audience and for sake of the flow, we will be directing some questions to you. Feel free to also chip in if you feel you have something interesting to contribute on a question which has not been directed to you. However, a very simple request, keep it as short as possible. We live in an era of very short attention spans. And therefore, if we keep it short enough, 3 minutes, 4 minutes kind of responses, it should help us also connect well with the audience. What we will do is that at the end of the session, we will be taking up questions from the audience. I request the audience to keep typing in your questions and sending it to us. We will be discussing these questions with the panelists towards the end. And therefore, to start today's proceedings and giving Archana the benefit of being the only woman professional in the panel, I would like to first solicit her views. Archana, the simple question that we have to start with is that what are the key procurement trends that you're witnessing? And what has been the difference between phase 1 and phase 2 of what we are seeing?
Um, Thank you very much, Girish, for the question, and welcome all the participants to this forum and listening to us. I think from 2020 to 2021, what has been the real changes is when we started to encounter Corona in late of 2019, we thought that all the imports from China would be impacted, and we started looking at backups plans for China imports. But we never thought that these Corona impacts will do come to our country, and we will also see impacts of lockdown in our country, and the demand will go down. So all the companies, they started building up the inventories, not really looking at a forward outlook of 6 to 8 months, that how our own country will suffer through this Corona virus, and the states will go into lockdowns. So the demands went down. There were challenges with very hard lockdowns. There were no movements of man or materials were allowed. So we initially started struggling with that, and later on tried to establish our supply chain post 1.5 months after taking all the approvals from the government authorities responsible in the states. Now, after that, we came back with very good plans in terms of establishing the supply chain. Slowly, the lockdowns releasing, but as the second wave came in 2021, the people got impacted a lot in terms of their health issues, their well-being, and though the supply chains were intact, there were no critical lockdowns being imposed by the government, but the overall people health, wellness took a toll, which impacted all of us, our near ones, our dear ones. And I think from a business point of view, we kept steady and stable, but somewhere this human factor came a lot to play in the role this year, instead of any other dynamics of corona in terms of the business or supply chain or supply challenges. So, yeah.
Thanks, Archana. In fact, yes, in the first phase, we looked at more of streamlining our supply bases, while in this phase, it has been more with the people who are manning the function itself, uh, which is a cause of concern. Radha, if I can come to you, what would be your observations about the current state of the procurement function, both from pre-pandemic and post-pandemic? How are you seeing this transition happening?
Thanks, Girish, for asking this, and welcome to all the audiences who are over here. Now, coming to the question, Girish, I think there have been the focus areas pre-pandemic and post-pandemic into various factors which procurement has been looking at. However, the intensity of that focus has increased, and some of them are after pandemic. What are the learnings is that there was always, number one, there was always a focus on the reliability of the supplier base. However, after this pandemic, one of the factor which has got a lot of focus and a lot of importance is reliability. Now, this reliability is of entire value chain in terms of suppliers supplying to you the material in time, as well as his back-end supply chain. So the reliability of entire value chain is something which has got some more focus. It was always there, but now it has got the intense focus. That's number one. Number two is, in terms of my own experiences, that number two is the collaboration. I think building on each other's capability, which got again a lot of priority, that I might be having some capabilities. Simple example: vendor can produce, but he can't transport it to your, because of the logistical challenges, kind of thing. And that's where, if the collaboration comes, can I pick it up and ensure that it is available in my plant? So collaboration is the second one. Third one, if I talk about, is business continuity plans. I think we all talked about the business continuity plans. A lot of focus again came on, having maybe the alternate suppliers, alternate vendors, kind of thing. And I keep saying into different forums that not EF, but the Z class item can stop your A class item production. So how do we generate a business continuity plan for each and every item which could be, under risk? That's third. Fourth, I think, which has come up, Girish, is the scenario planning. In this scenario, in this one, we saw that, the demand is not only for some item has gone down to almost nil, but for some item it has gone multiple times higher. Some of the items like sanitizer, the disinfectant spray, soap, etc., it has gone multiple times higher. And then supplier base was under pressure to supply and meet that kind of demand. So one thing is on the scenario planning, where you say, if demand goes so much of high, how do we have, what are the plans we have proactively? And also, in otherwise, that if it goes to almost nil for some of the items, then how do we sustain and how do we still, survive in the business, is the fourth one. And fifth one, not the last but not least one, is the automation. Is something which has come in, where people had a lot of issue in the communication, kind of thing. So we are talking about, and I think we'll cover it, the digitization which has come in, placing the simple things like placing the PO automatically and then receiving, etc. All those kind of thing, automation in entire procurement process has got the priority. So these are the 5 changes which, Girish, in briefly I have seen, which have got more focus. Not that they were not there, but they have got intense focus, and those are the learnings for the procurement during this pandemic.
Thank you, Radha. It was quite interesting to see the 5 well-articulated 5 major issues that was addressed by the procurement in the transition period. Shom, if I could come to you, we did talk a lot of processes, strategy, and technology coming together to create the kind of situation that the kind of direction that we want to go. Before we get into the technology part of it, if I could ask you a simpler question of what is the role of procurement in building an agile supply chain? Because a lot of what Radha talked about is also agility. What's the role of procurement in that?
Good afternoon, everybody, and allow me to start on a lighter note in this very somber environment in which we are all working. I'm so happy that these seminars and webinars are now happening without the jacket and tie. It's so much more comfortable, right? And I can also advertise my mom's magic cookies. So while I do this to a very large audience. So Girish, I have the now recently had the privilege of becoming the chairman of the Procurement Council within ITC. So all businesses and divisions of ITC have their own procurement teams. And while I represent ITC's foods business, but as the chairman of the council, today I have a bird's eye view on what's happening in the procurement world. And I represent a supply chain which is witnessing disruption on both ends of the spectrum. So we've got a Savlon with a 5,000% growth, and we've got a Bukhara restaurant in Delhi, which is otherwise booked for 2 months, but today there are no footfalls at all. So we've got to manage both of it. But one thing which I've learned today in terms of importance and agility is that the pandemic has brought home a profound realization that the industry is expecting a shift in trends pertaining to procurement and supply chain. In fact, we are being taken far more seriously by the head table today. Supply chain resilience has become a top priority, and today's procurement professionals benefit more from being integral and strategic part of the business than ever before. Previously, we were almost like an afterthought, right? Procurement and diversified supply chains are now becoming essential and also strategic. So in a way, this pandemic, in a very vicarious manner, has actually brought to light that the fact that was already known in the medieval past, that armies are as good as their supply chains, right? Somewhere in between, we had forgotten that, and today, I think most company head management is realizing that, again, as procurement professionals, we have the opportunity to play a very supportive part in corporate strategies, particularly sustainabilities and social responsibility programs. This sounds a little bit like motherhood and apple pie, I understand. But in the second part of what we're going to discuss, I'm going to give you use cases. I'm giving you real examples of what ITC did with its vendor base and partners. And I don't have any compunctions of sharing this with a larger group. It has been a great learning for ITC, and I really want to cascade this to the supply chain professionals. So with that, back to you, Girish. We will have another discussion on this.
Yeah, sure. So that's we look forward to your second presentation. Tarun, if I could come to you, again taking off from where Radha left off, the last point which he talked about of automation or technology in the whole function. How can technology, or what we now call as digitalization, lead to a shorter and seamless P2P cycle?
Yeah, is that for me, correct?
Yes, Tarun, it's for you.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. Okay. So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I think Shom touched on the digitalization bit, and I think last 2 years since the pandemic started, we have seen a huge shift in organizations towards digitalization. It's not just about procurement. It's not about just about supply chain, but I think the entire operations and a lot of other value streams have seen a huge investments and shift towards digitalization. So as far as procurement and supply chain is concerned, the way I see it is how it has helped the companies is to reduce the P2P cycle. And what it means is that it has resulted in efficiencies in terms of costs, because now people are spending, or the companies are spending less resources to churn out I would say purchase orders or whatever documents that they were doing earlier with multiple resources. Now those number of resources have come down, so that has been more efficient in terms of cost. I think the process efficiencies have increased quite tremendously. If there were 5 steps into the cycle and previously into the P2P cycle, they have been squeezed into 3, possibly. Some of things which were non-value added have been taken away. So that has helped quite a bit towards digitization. Like I said, the cycle times have come down because newer technologies have been incorporated, newer tools have come. So, for example, the bot assisted kind of assisted buying that we are seeing quite a bit in a lot of companies, where the users are they take instead of doing a PR to a PO, they just go there, bot helps them in terms of what they want, and then they can quickly choose from either the catalog or from wherever, and then it quickly turns around the requirement. So I've seen that quite a bit, and I think also the productivity of the processes have increased tremendously. For example, if you talk about contracts, so earlier there used to be a legal contract and a SAP contract, and all of that had their own lead times. Now, given that we are in a situation where everything has to be turned out as of yesterday, all those processes, all the productivity has seen a tremendous shift towards the positive side. So a lot of non-value added, lot of I would say typical waste, quote unquote, that was sitting into the processes has been eliminated by inclusions of better processes and move towards digitization. Back to you, Girish.
Thank you, Tarun. You touched upon some of the very interesting aspects of bringing in digitalization can lead to a shorter cycle by process rationalization. Uh, which leads me to Manmeet. Manmeet, uh, process rationalization has always been a challenge in any organization, even in the best of times. The rationalization process. And if I could ask you also, what are the ecosystem requirements for such a rationalization process to take root and flourish?
Thanks a lot, Girish, and good afternoon, everyone. I think a lot of what I'm going to answer to this question has been addressed by my colleagues. Mr. Radhaman Gupta talked about the fact that there are already ongoing initiatives. When you go into COVID, you get the opportunity to accelerate them. Accordingly, I think the process of simplification of procurement processes and the digitization around it, the automation, mechanization, many initiatives are already afoot. A simple process like, for example, looking at e-wash to source, platforms like Ariba always existed to take quotations, to do auctions, and they have become more prominent as the relevance of face-to-face meetings and negotiations came down. So that's the part about taking quotes. Then the process of looking and identifying for vendors has been made simpler and more robust and was accelerated. The acceptability to these systems became higher because of the fragility in the supply chain itself. The need to go to tier N suppliers became more stronger. Solutions did exist outside, so experimentations around that started. Archana talked about the fact how fragility expanded from China to Indonesia to Thailand origins to stocking and then stocking relevance and kind of avoiding obsolescence. So predictive analysis, etc., became more important. It's all about the need and the mindset for us in terms of accelerating it. All of this existed. The government was pushing for e-invoicing on GST, and people were looking at reducing their transaction costs and manpower. It was a simple fact that to scan invoices, nobody could even go to the office in Gurgaon. We did not get permissions to open the office. So how would you pay the suppliers? Oh, here's a e-invoicing portal. Please enroll on that, send e-invoices. Your payments and transactions can become faster. You need cash flows. We have the ability to do reverse factoring with banking arrangements. Let's get onboarded on that. So we moved from 18,000 invoices to over 1 lakh invoices in less than a month, while we were struggling to convince people to get to even 18,000 for 8 months before that. So mother is, the invention of the necessity is the mother of everything that we need to do. So process simplification follows, automatic release empowerment follows. You trust your people to be at home and they're working day in, day out, specifically in supply chain. So therefore, why do we still need to have antiquated systems where a head of procurement and EVP finance will approve the purchase order? It leads to more empowerment and kind of auto release of purchase orders and more robust MRPs and more empowerment to people. You look at your processes and look at efficiencies, response times, reaction times, the concept of agility and flexibility that was talked about before. It creates the needs in the ecosystem automatically. The ecosystem also needs to respond to the fact that sometimes some supplier is closing down, then the supplier is closing down. So you have to go beyond just looking for alternative suppliers and alternative origins of suppliers. You have to look for alternative materials. You have to scale up. You have to understand not just how you are buying, who you are buying, but what you are buying more of. How can you substitute A kind of starch with B kind of starch if A is not available? So those are also ecosystems that bring agility and leanness to our mindset and our process.
Thank you. Thank you, Manmeet. Yes, quite interesting. Gaurav, if I were to take these issues again and come back to you, a lot of what we talk about for processes, yes, procurement for a very long time was caught in our systems were antiquated. They were not dynamic enough to allow these kind of quick rationalizations and quick changes. Uh, And not only is it that you require it for yourself, but you also need to now bring the ecosystem onto that platform. How will technology, what are the kind of technologies that are now being available, or what are the kind of technology solutions that you are looking at that would help this kind of process which will help companies achieve these kind of process rationalizations far more easily? Yeah, you're still on mute.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Girish, for that. And I'm grateful for everyone here, all attendees, all panelists, colleagues, for joining this. Broadly, we as Procol only started 3 years ago now. It's been 3 years for us, 36 months in the industry. And pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, we have seen almost 4 times the growth in digitization across all industries. Some industries are faster in adopting digital tools. Some industries are lagging. But broadly, we have seen 5 to 10% of penetration of procurement digitization across Indian enterprises. And COVID sort of has accelerated all digital initiatives, like both Radha, Tarun, Shom, Manmeet, everyone has mentioned here. And broadly, when we look at technologies, we try to look at first understand the businesses of people who are running these businesses. Technology is no good when a horse is, I mean, a car is no good if the driver does not have the skill, right? So more and more technologies are being driven for being led by procurement professionals themselves. When we bucketize these technologies, we start with source to contract with, which is your e-sourcing. Then we look at procure to pay, that is your e-procurement. And on top of it, we look at spend analytics, supplier management, and then there are predictiveness on all of these technologies available. And broadly, this is what is happening. While platforms like Ariba's existed for past 2 decades in India also, there are more verticalization platforms coming in that solve far simpler needs and more directed ROI focused tools that are coming in. And they go horizontal as with time, but they start with one pain point which all companies would like to solve and solve it the best way. We saw multinationals using 4 to 6 different tools for different procurement, bringing in different value adds. And I feel there are going to be many different technologies now available across cognitive buying, like Tarun said, or predictive analytics, like Manmeet said. Penetration of such technologies in Indian market is going to increase with more homegrown technology providers also coming in. I think that's the shift we are seeing. While this landscape was filled with the Western players, more Indian ecosystem and startups are coming in to support the technology procurement transformation in Indian companies.
Thank you. In fact, it will be one of the things that we also keep forgetting is that the agility and innovation are more with the smaller startups than with the enterprise resource planning solution providers, who very often have a very fixed timeline of rolling out their products, and their timelines do not match with your business compulsions, and therefore there is a waiting period involved, while a startup, because of the innovativeness and agility, can quickly step in and provide that kind of changes that you need in real time. Moving on, if I were to again come back to Archana with some of all that we spoke about, you did also speak about how procurement adapted itself and changed. What were the changes that brought about in phase 1, phase 2 of the pandemic? If you can give us a little bit more insight on the innovative approaches in procurement that have been adapted, not only by you, but also which you know of, to ensure continuity of supplies in light of the current disruptions?
Thank you for this question, Girish. I think Gaurav rightly said that a lot of companies have different platforms for doing different things, like source to pay or e-procurement or post-productive analysis. So, in terms of the innovative approaches that many companies are taking right now is interfacing all these digital tools together to have it in a one common place so that the procurement efficiencies are driven in a right place wherein the sourcing managers have one go-to place in terms of doing their entire tasks, right? It may be from sourcing, source to pay, management of contracts, raising the required approval request. So I think this is one of the very key initiative that most of the companies are driving in terms of integrating all their platforms. As Gaurav also said that Ariba is 2 decades old. So from an innovative point of view, companies are also looking at startups for providing newer solutions in terms of managing manufacturing supply chains, managing procurement efficiencies, doing some sort of market intelligence in terms of predictive analysis. So those are a few of the innovative areas that companies are looking for in this pandemic time, because it is not all the time looking inside the company for any innovative solutions. It is more looking outside of what is happening in your environment with the government reformulations, what the governments are asking for, may it be in terms of sustainability laws, may it be in terms of packaging laws, may it be in terms of any essential commodities that you need to maintain as a companies. I think looking externally and then innovating internally, and as Radha said rightly, that we need to collaborate more with our suppliers. As Manmeet was also saying that we have to work with supplier in terms of collaboration. So how can we bring that outside in perspective in terms of our companies to innovate further, to be relevant in the current scenarios, and also 5 years down in terms of future planning, in terms of any strategies that we laid out for maybe for procurement function or maybe as a overall supply chain function.
Thank you, Archana. Yes, technology, larger players versus agile players. Like we talk about agility in supply chains, we also need agility in solution providers, because the ecosystem, you're as good as your ecosystem support is. Rather, if I were to bring the same question to you, we have been speaking about improving profit, improving our operational efficiencies in procurement, which is also the theme of the discussion today. In a world where disruptions have become very common, and what at one time used to be called as a black swan event is no more black swan today, because a black swan by its very definition should be once in a 25-year event. But we are seeing a major disruption happening almost every 3 to 4 years. When we are being disrupted with such regularity and such severity on a constant basis, how can we improve our efficiencies, procurement efficiencies?
Yeah, Girish, it's true. I think the way disruptions are coming and with the intensity they are coming have been increasing over a period of time, right? And that's where, everything, not only procurement, I think what's being talked about and what being looked at is that how the entire supply chain, the value chain becomes agile, flexible, and dovetail to the entire chain to each other. So coming to this one, that how, and specifically on procurement, that how procurement increases its efficiency, in terms of the disruption and how to ensure the continuity of the supply. I think we have touched base on number one is on the continuity plans. I mean, there has to be a battery of suppliers with you where we have continuity of plans discussed with them. We look at the supplier supply chain backend and ensure that we treat them as business partner. I think that is the another concept where not only the collaboration, but they are the business partners, so that we face the risk, we together, and we grow the business together. So that is the second thing which I'm talking about, that partnership concept, which need to really get imbibed totally into the entire chain, where it is not win-lose kind of situation, but win-win situation, even if you are passing through a difficult time. So that is second thing. Third thing, I think in terms of operational efficiency in the procurement, when we are talking about, is certainly also, and looking at this disruption, is that it's not on the demand basis, but it is on proactively basis, that how do we develop even not alternate suppliers, but alternate raw materials. When we find out, we do the analysis and find out these are the raw materials or packing materials where we have the issues and the supply issues. How do we develop together? And this where the third point comes in, that how we the R&D of yours talks with R&D of the suppliers, so that we work together. The supplier have the capability and you have the requirement, where we can work together to find out the alternates, be it raw materials or the packaging. The fourth point comes over here is in terms of certainly dovetailing the information. Now, if you go by the data, and Gaurav is here, a lot of data is being thrown out in supply chain, right? And 20 to 30% data is only captured. 20 to 30. Remaining is lost data, which people call dark data around, right? Now, this dark data has lots of information. We need to collect it together. It's not only me, but it's at supplier end as well. To give you an example, you visit the supplier end, you find out that out of these parameters, what is being supplied, one of the parameter is not required, and two of his process can get eliminated just because of that. You don't require those parameters in the final product. Now, this is the value add to your supplier base, saying that these two processes are not required, at least by me, maybe other people kind of thing, and then you have to work it out. However, you can improve the entire process, basis the data which you are collecting all over, and then these information are dovetailed together. It's not only collecting the data, but also making them talk together and implementing them to finally getting the efficiencies over there. Are there some of the things? One of the things which comes is that, of course, the basic function of procurement is certainly in terms of the making the deals, the cost cutting, etc., etc. However, when we are talking now about the operational efficiency, we need to leave our vendors with that is something bread and butter, which they need to ensure that it is cost competitive and quality competitive. It is not my job. It is the supplier base who is ensuring for the organization, again as a business partner. And procurement need to move on some of the things which I just explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Shom, if I were to take this question over to you also, for a long time, our business model is predicated on having huge amounts of inventory. Then we moved in time, and now we are moving into just in case. As we move through this, and as Radha also pointed about the necessity to collaborate and create value, how do we create procurement value in a complex and volatile supply chain?
So I will answer your question in the reverse pattern, and I will start from where Radha left. So,
Yes.
One of the things that we had identified long back before it was fashionable, in fact, 6-7 years back, we had taken a call. Can we be completely make in India? And now Modi ji has given it a word, Atmanirbharta, right? So we are unique being a completely Indian conglomerate, and I'm not taking away from my worthy colleagues here who are MNCs and the fact, but the fact is we take pride in the fact that we don't pay any royalties to anybody. Our products are all developed in home in India, and then 6 years back we had told ourselves, can we make our products completely in India? Can we be completely import independent? And we had been working towards this over the last few years. And today, I'm proud to share with the group that any ITC product and ITC food product that you buy today, be it Yippee, Sunfeast, Bingo, etc., all of these are made completely in India. There is no imported ingredient in it. So we do have few imports, like our Fabel chocolate has the ruby chocolate, which comes from Ghana. It only grows there. But having said that, except for a handful of such stuff, we are completely Atmanirbhar, and that makes a huge difference, as we realized that during this pandemic. So that is one. Second, diversified manufacturing basis, and therefore diversified procurement, localized procurement. That's again been a huge driver for ITC. In fact, during pandemic one, during last year, or wave one, everything was shut down in 12 hours notice, and we were one of the first companies to bounce back with our Ashirwad atta and biscuits, etc., because we realized that food products have to reach people, right? So that has been there, done that. Okay. Last year, of course, there was a lot of the lockdown was severe. The impediments in supply chain were also very severe, and we worked towards convincing a lot of people to allow our vehicles to ply, etc. But there was a lot of fear amongst our suppliers and vendor base that what happens, hum log ko kya hoga, hum log ko infection ho gaya to kya hoga, etc. And there we had shared last year safety protocols with them on how they can continue with their manufacturing, etc. And things worked. So that was 2020, and my appraisal for 2020 is done and dusted. But you know what happened? In reality, in 2020, the number of cases and the fatalities were much lower. Today, while the lockdowns are localized, but the fear is palpable and it's real, because people are actually getting stricken down. Last year, we had assured everybody that you are a partner to ITC, and see, this is the emotional connect. This black swan event, it doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, your supply chain is as strong as your partner is, and how strongly you stand with your partner, right? So we last year had told everybody that don't worry, hum hai na, main hu na aapke saath, right? Unko last year hamari zarurat nahi padi, but is saal. And you know what? Let me share with you. If you look inwards, you will find when we looked inwards, we found that we have a family of 15 lakh, right? Now, who is our family? The guy who's doing our media is my family. The guy who's supplying me maida is my family. Packaging is my family. Not only is my distributor my family, my transporter is my family. So when you count all of these guys in, and you know what? The combined neural network knowledge and contacts of all these people is amazing. So we've actually been able to help out our vendors get hospital beds, get oxygen. You know what? We've got two of our vendors who also manufacture remdesivir. So that doesn't give us easy access. You get it only under doctors or hospitals' prescription. But the fact is, we know that it's available, and we can tap into it. One of our vendors has got the license for the black fungus medication now, and his first batch rolls out in the next 2 weeks. So this is a huge neural network. I think each of you here, if you look into your networks, you will find that this works. And believe me, the kind of motivation that and the safety net that you build when you bring everyone together as a family is incredible. These guys are not even going to talk to you about negotiations in a hurry. Yeah, they're going to first remember that you're family. So that is one. And quickly, another thing which I would like to add is black swan events. You're right, are now happening every 2-3 years. Earlier, they used to happen once in quarter century. So, in my early years of my career, I have not seen this kind of a procurement manager's job was quite boring. Prices were quite flat. So our life becomes interesting when there is volatility, right? You can argue that it also becomes difficult, but that's the way it is. But now these kind of disruptions are giving us a unique opportunity. Are you able to make apada mein, are you able to convert that into an opportunity? Aapta mein avsar. So I'm sorry, I'm quoting Modi ji quite liberally over here. But the fact of the matter is, it is a powerful idea. So did we all buy the 2020 dip in commodities? And those of us who did are today, enjoying the fruits of that, because we've seen what has happened to commodities after that. Is it going to happen again? No, I think the playbook will change. So today what is happening is all my vendors are more or less coming back to me and asking for a price increase for across a plethora of raw materials and packaging materials. And while we listen to them patiently, we tell them, okay, we understand the inflationary pressures, but hey, you're my partner, you're my family, isn't it? Do you have a solution to mitigate this? Don't come to me only with a cry to increase prices. Come to me with solutions. And therefore, we have created a digital platform called AKM. AKM means oneness, right? And here, I'm encouraging my vendors to input their ideas. So, like Radha mentioned, we've got 27 parameters which are checked for hitherto for a raw material. But hello, Food Safety Authority of India says that only 20 of them are mandatory. The rest, are you doing an overkill? So can you go back to your product development head and say, listen, this is what it is, and can you knock these 7 off? And if you do so, the efficiencies will improve, costs will improve, etc. So there are these. This is an opportunity. We must take this disruption as an opportunity to look at each and every aspect of cost and work with your vendors. It's not a question of taking a hammer and hitting them on the head. It's a question of working with them, right? And taking advantage of structural benefit where it is possible, and of course, tactical benefit. You buy the dip. So never take your eye off the market. Always be agile, buy the dip, is what I tell my young procurement friends. With that, back to you, Girish.
Thank you, Shom. Interesting. It was quite interesting to see the Atmanirbharta as a concept being implemented in a very rigorous way. And thank you for that. If I were to bring Tarun into the picture now, Tarun, shifting away from processes back into technology, because 50% of operational efficiency is also bringing in technology. And if I were to go out on the limb and speak to you about how will blockchain and other emerging technologies enable efficiencies, and what are the building blocks that we need to focus on?
Yeah. On the blockchain, my personal view has been that, it's a technology whose time has come now. Over last many years, we have been hearing about blockchain, but, practically we didn't see much of implementation, at least in the supply chain. It was something like what we call, it was bridesmaid, never a bride. But now I think it has actually stepped in and stepped in big. I have a test case with myself. That's something which brings on forth what this technology can deliver. It's on the logistics side. So typically, when you move some of the raw materials and packaging materials from countries nearby, say South Asia, the time of travel of the materials is lower than the time it takes the documents to get delivered for you to clear the goods. That's just an example. And and if you are doing it through a bank, if it's a LC or whatever it is, that adds another, a week or 10 days into the system, because, banks have their own sweet ways of clearing all of that. And that brings in a huge amount of inefficiency. Your material is sitting at the port, and you want that material, but you can't get it because, of this whole document thing. And I think what we have seen as a test case is that if you do it through blockchain, and now there are platforms that are available where you can actually accelerate this to I would say at least 5x, if not more, in terms of the speed. So you can cut down a lot of steps that would have been involved in terms of physical movement of the documents, versus build it on that platform, on the blockchain, where the BL, which is the primary document that moves on the blockchain, and day 2 or day 3 you are ready to take the delivery of the goods, as long as the bank is a party to it. So I'm just an example. So this is something which I've seen. The other thing that I have heard a lot, but possibly not yet seen in India, and possibly it's thing which is yet to come, is on the traceability. I think in lots of Western countries, you see, you when you scan a document, when you scan a material from the shelf, you can go back all the way to any raw material or packaging material supplier and all of that. That's a great thing to have, because your consumers want to know what you are giving them, right? What's the material that they're buying, where it is coming from, and all of that. I think that's going to be another big element that blockchain can enable, and it has already enabled, like I said, in few places. I think it's just in a matter of time that's going to happen in India as well. But these two or three things, I think, this is what has been the advent of this technology, and it has only accelerated over last, I would say, year or so. Given that we were all finding ways and means to do things better and faster, like Manmeet said, the necessity is the mother of invention. I think this was the necessity, and it suddenly took off, right? So, and it's only a matter of time that we will see more such technologies coming into play. So, absolutely bullish on this one. Back to you, Girish.
Thanks, Tarun. It was quite interesting to note that experiments with blockchain are off, and that we are now looking at pilots and taking it ahead. If I were to come to you and look at an entirely different aspect within procurement, which is essentially spend management. Spend has always been and will always remain one of the most significant challenges for any procurement professional. So the question would be, how easy is it for firms to gain spend visibility? And once you gain visibility, what are the broad frameworks for managing spend?
Okay, thanks, Girish. I think spend management and gaining visibility is pretty easy for organized companies, because everything that we procure or source, we pay for. So we're able to trace back and categorize into where is that money going, how recurrent is it, who's the custodian, and what do we get back in return for it. So when it came to the integration of services and indirect materials and capex and procurement, we started this journey pretty early in terms of essentially bringing the element of segregation of duty and compliance into it as an enabler. And as we were rolling out our SAP system, the visibility systems and the control became easier. So the access and the ability to create purchase orders was given only to the procurement function. That became an enabler for us to look at visibility and aggregation and implementation of this and put a structure and control around it. That was the starting journey, and also a key enabler to looking at how the role of procurement in this could expand. And from about 2 people managing service and indirect materials, we built up a team of about 18. And over a period of time, from saving a couple of million rupees to thousands of millions of rupees, the journey happened fairly quickly in a matter of 3 years for us. So there were low hanging fruits, of course, just by bringing in the process element of competitive bidding and challenging what we are buying. This later evolved into more strategic elements, like developing a strategy and understanding the user end needs better, doing supplier segmentation, bringing in the portals 5 forces, and then building a strategy in which you could do 2 things. Either you could buy something cheaper, it's available for 100, you save money by bringing it to 98, or if you're willing to spend 100 and you get X out of it, then you try to get X plus 10 delta X more out of it. So whether you stretch the dollar or you reduce the dollar, or elements that came in. And I think in the involvement of procurement in these non-conventional spend areas, it is a welcome sign. It always creates value for the money, for the consumer at the end of the day, not just for the organization, because it brings credibility to the whole process as well, and it allows also the system to have a good cop and a bad cop. The user can do his role in terms of challenging in the quality of the need, etc., and being soft to the vendor, whereas the kind of more difficult elements of this relationship can be handed over to the procurement team. And for us, it extends in Nestle to 98% of what we buy, whether it is land or capex or machineries or security or canteen or food or travel or co-manufacturing, merchandising, retailing spends, consultancy spends, agency fees. So you name it, we've brought it in.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
hope
Thank
it
you.
helps. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Gaurav, if I were to bring you back in, if I were to step back and ask you, what strategies can we design to innovate and achieve operational excellence?
Yeah, thanks again, Girish. I think I'll answer this from very first principles, right? Procurement teams, basic, and what are they up to now? You can pretty much think of a framework where you want to put on what is it that we're trying to accomplish in this quarter, next quarter, this year, and everyone has their priorities, right? So rather than fitting in a broad-based solution that is available in the market, I think all procurement leaders already ask themselves that what is it that they want to accomplish in the next few quarters, and they put metrics around it. They put what they want to achieve very explicitly. Now, across this entire CPO, like there was this very recent survey across 400 CPOs in 40 countries, where achieving operational excellence has now become #1 priority across these countries. With other initiatives, of course, having supplier reliability um, and driving costs down, or bringing in more suppliers, better relationships, and so on. Technology, I would like to add, is an enabler for each of these priorities. Uh, they accelerate your inputs in achieving everything. And technology is moving fast in the world. We saw in the past 10 years how India is completely now reformed because of technology enablements that many large companies now have adopted. ITC, for example, Reliance, Jio, and Tata now acquiring tech companies. All leading conglomerates of Indian businesses are leading change in technology and bringing in more innovation. But everyone has their core ideas and agenda in place, right? They want to achieve what they feel is right for their business. And it all starts there. It all starts with what is right for everyone's business. There can be overlaps, but basic technologies are going to be a must have across all companies. And then comes out advanced technologies where uh, limited CPOs will try and experiment and build their own sophistication in terms of technology. They know the possibilities that technology has brought in the past, and they know what it is capable of doing now in the future. They have all used apps like Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, which are very intuitive and simple to use. And procurement technology is still lacking ease of use or intuitiveness, will not be adopted. So it is about simplicity, it is about doing work faster, it is about delivering better results. And technologies can be enabler for every procurement initiative out there, from sustainability globally to having diversity to negotiations to bringing in innovations from your current supplier base. There are point solutions available in the market for each of these initiatives.
Thank you, Gaurav, for that. If I were to now ask each of you a question which is two-pronged, and again starting with Archana, uh, what do you see is the future of procurement? Which direction are we moving?
Thank you for the question, Girish. I think in terms of future for procurement, what I see is more of business partnership rather than just being a function in the overall business. I think we drive the bottom line for the P&L very critically in terms of the entire spend that we manage for the company, and hence our involvement in all the critical decision planning or strategy planning in terms of the forward-looking business plans, may it be innovations, may it be driving growth for the business, and driving further capacity expansions for our suppliers in line with those growth plans for the business. bringing in right partnerships, as Radha was saying, with suppliers to support the business growth in the areas that we expect the business to grow. I think procurement plays a very bigger role into end-to-end supply chain in terms of enabling the business to do what they wish to do in terms of their growth portfolios, maybe new product innovations or maybe regular product building growth engines to the same.
Thank you. Radha, if I could ask you a question. Um, what are your what are your comments on sustainability in procurement? There are two issues there. One is sustainability, other is ethical procurement. If you could share some aspects of that, because they also have a significant impact on uh, the way we have structured our processes.
Right, Girish. I think that this is something sustainability, which is like going through, it's a common thread which is flowing through the entire organization now. It needs, I think, the focus is at different stage in different organization and different industry, right? The drivers, if you see, if you are saying that, what is the main, and from the procurement point of view, I would say that it starts with the mindset at the leadership, right? That this sustainability concept now need to get integrated with the business strategy. It's something like that. Whatever we do, back of your mind somewhere it is that you have sustainability in your mind. So it all starts with the mindset, which is leadership. It's a cultural change which need to come in to start with. That's number one. Number two, I think we have fair examples in terms of if you want to export to Europe, you need the reach compliance, as simple as that, right? In future, this sustainability is going to be something like that, that you need to follow the sustainable processes, sustainable way of manufacturing, etc. And those vendors over a period of time will be prioritized so that you have sustainability inbuilt into your processes in supply chain, be it yourself or be it suppliers. That's two. Number three is when you are talking about, I think, a procurement professional now is dealing with so much of vendors, so much of supply, in terms of contracts, which he is doing, and a plethora of activities which is happening in procurement function. And that's where a tech-enabled process ability also need to come in, where, this all CSR, code of conduct, sustainability, all those are inbuilt into the processes, and they are technology enabled, is something which will help procurement professional see that sustainability objectives are met. Another thing is very important one is in terms of the information flow. I think we covered it, my colleagues over here, panel members covered it. It's flowing, the information flowing from one end to another end, which enables again the decision which supports sustainability. It is like this: if you have to design a product, let's say packaging kind of thing, and now we have the sustainability targets across the organization. Right at the design stage, you will choose the material which is recyclable. Number one, right at the stage, you will choose the suppliers. You will involve the suppliers who use to manufacture energy efficient processes. Maybe you are using the solar energy to run your machines, which is sustainability friendly kind of thing, right? So it will start from that. That information is at every stage. It's packaging development, it is R&D, it is even procurement. That these are the processes, and our preference is to have the supplier base, which is also supporting sustainability. Last but not least, I would say also that in terms of the trend which is coming is outsourcing in procurement, right? Now, that's where the skill sets comes in, that procurement will have to look at the skill sets that we focus on the outsourcing with the experts who have the sustainable process at their end. Girish, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha. Shom, there is a question which I would like to direct to you. This has come from a member of the audience. It is Shashank Kumar, and he says, while cost saving has been the top agenda for procurement, are we seeing a shift in the top 3 priorities of PO given the current disruption and significant commodity headwinds?
Sorry, Girish, could you repeat the question? I missed part of it.
While cost saving has been the top agenda for procurement, are we seeing a shift in the top 3 priorities for CPOs given the current disruption and significant commodity headwinds?
हाँ भाई, सिंपल है. भाव भगवान होता है, वो हम सब जानते हैं. ठीक है? So cost saving is important, but material must reach your plant. यार, plant चलना चाहिए ना पहले. Plant चलेगा तभी ना आप धंधा करोगे. So the significance that we've learned, in other words, is that, listen, it is the availability of the right material at the right time, at the right place, through your trusted partners, is the most important. And while you're doing all of this, we particularly, and Manmeet would resonate, he's also in the food industry. See, we are from the food space. So, you know, we have to be also cognizant of the quality paradigms. So these are the top 3 things in my mind. And if I were to just add a little bit on the sustainability bit, because it's something which worries me.
Yes.
While I can tell this group the sustainability story of ITC Bhadrachalam, how we created a forest to source our pulp. I can tell you the story of Munger, which became a CSR activity, which became almost like a Moga for us. And Manmeet, Munger, Moga matches, right? So that is also becoming a big story. But what I would like to share today is on plastic waste management. This is something which is going to come, which is coming to bite us all, right? Some interesting statistics, and this is to give encouragement to the group here that it can be done. So we calculated ITC group produces 26,000 tons of solid waste, okay, including cigarette butts. And several years back, we started our program called WOW, which is Well Thought of Waste. And today the WOW program is working in 29 cities across the country. And we are collecting 18,000 tons of solid waste, right? So that is one thing. And what is becoming of this waste is more important. What is becoming of this waste is that the NGOs, etc., with whom we've tied up, have converted these into very lightweight and waterproof bricks, right? This is being converted into road building material, which makes the roads stronger and more immune to rain and water, etc. In fact, we have collected so much of our own plastic that we have built a super highway to the moon. And now by 2025, our highway will reach Mars, right? So that's the length and breadth of the scope of what we are trying to do. I'm just trying to put these things in a very palatable, understandable manner. But I think all of us here must be cognizant and very acutely aware of the environmental impact that we are having, and what are we doing towards mitigating that, because otherwise our children are not going to forgive us. So we have to look at sustainability not only from the point of view of our businesses, but now that I'm old enough and close to retirement, I have to start thinking about the next generation. And you know, I wouldn't like to be blamed as the guy who polluted India with Candyman and Bingo chips packets all over the country, right? So I would like to be known as the guy who helped take it out of the environment. So we are working towards that. And with that thought, I'd like to over to you, back to Girish.
Thank you. Tarun, if I could bring you in again. What are your take on the future direction of procurement and the way we are building efficiencies in our processes?
Yeah, so my thoughts are a little radical. Possibly within a community procurement, I might be calling a harikiri if I say that the future of procurement and in the long term, and like they say, in long term, all of us are no more, all are dead. But
yes,
in the long term, the procurement will cease. In my view, is it will cease to exist. And the reason why I say that is because the way we have moved, like the journeys that started last decade on the indirect side, where the way we have now moved forward, integrated the whole procurement with the users. So, for example, Manmeet was talking about the S&IM journey in Nestle. I was part of it as well. The users were not even aware how much were they spending with a particular supplier or on a particular item or machine before they, actually we put the spend analysis in front of them. For them, it was just one-off buy. They didn't understand the magnanimity of that spend and what it can drive, for the organization. I think all of that now ingrained into the professionals, all those who come now into the business. The organizations have had a journey where they have learned their lessons, sometimes, in a hard way. So it's all kind of built into the DNA, right? I think, the way it's going to happen is that more and more of these systems, processes will be automated. They will be digitized, like we said, and they will all have they would all lead into a scenario which we call utopian scenario, where no human intervention could eventually add any more value. That's the, of course, that's a very, very long term thing, but this is where I see this whole trend going. And I think in the near term, I think like Archana said, a lot of it has to do with technology. The more and more new platforms that are coming in, which are related with the ERPs, the kind of procurement analytics that we do, the kind of spend analysis that we see, all of that is empowering not just procurement, but all the systems or all the people in the system, and for them to take a better decision. So I think it's going to accelerate big time in terms of technology, have much lesser manual intervention, and at some point of time, it needs to exist. That's my view.
Thank you. Thank you, Tarun. Manmeet, if I could ask you for your views on the future.
Good. I mean, my views over a period of time have fluctuated, and I had the same views that Tarun had, that maybe procurement will evolve into a role, not a function in future. I tend to subscribe to that, but with a little bit of difference. I think it's a role that will change and evolve. I think our role as a standalone function, like Archana said, will diminish into more of business partnering, getting closer to business, and an enablement of growth. I also feel that procurement is an intrinsic part of operations, yet different from operations, because very few organizations have the privilege to be the external eyes and ears of an organization. Sales and procurement have that unique privilege that we are the external connect. We bring those insights, that knowledge, that acumen, the neural skills that Shomnath referred to. We have the accountability and the responsibility to bring those insights back to our generating demand team, back to our production colleagues, to adjust, adapt, and become more flexible and agile, the words that you used earlier. So for me, the role of procurement will change. It will change also to answer the question that the audience asked and Shomnath answered. Savings is not everything it used to be. It's just, let's say, like a microscope to look at the world at from a procurement perspective. The world in the future is more like a Nikon lens, which sometimes have a long vision, a short vision, bifocal, trifocal, multifocal. So this role, the priorities of procurement will change. Its role has to evolve. The direction I clearly see it going towards, it's also been touched earlier. A critical role for procurement is to enable sustainability for business and for consumers, and that's the legacy which I feel very happy that all of us who have participated take it with a sense of personal passion and pride, that this is the legacy I want to leave behind. It's not just a legacy, it's our responsibility as procurement to drive this, because when we talk as HOPs to our community, to our families, the people we work with, engage with, and source from, they listen to us because they have to listen to us. We should do it not because we want to, but also because we have to drive this change for our climate and for environment. I see a very important role for procurement in driving these changes. I see procurement driving innovation for the organization. I see procurement bringing a lot of operational efficiency and integrating into operations rather than being a standalone function.
Thank you, Manmeet. Gaurav, there's a question for you from which I would like to direct to you, which is from the audience. He's asking, how can low-cost automation, especially small process automation, contribute to improving operational efficiency in procurement?
right? Just to
Sorry, is it,
Yeah, Tarun.
go ahead, go ahead.
no, go
No,
ahead,
no, go
Tarun.
ahead. Is this for me, Giri, or is it
It's for
for Gaurav?
Gaurav.
I didn't hear that.
It's for
Oh, sorry.
Gaurav.
Please carry on. Yeah, please carry
Very simply put, low cost process automation is on the rise globally. There is a trend of low code automation globally that is happening, where companies can digitize and automate very minute internal processes very fast. By very fast, I mean within 2 to 4 weeks, and not even longer than that. Which means you pick any process where thousands of transactions are happening on a repetitive basis, and companies will be automate them very, very fast. So you can see direct impact in terms of cost saving and high productivity improvements by such one-stop solutions. Um, but and now coming back to the broader agenda, I think procurement, like going taking procurements. If you look at it, it's going to be very strategic. Like Archana and Manmeet, I think everyone here is of the view that procurement will be working very close with the big business functions, and I think they are eventually be on the board of all companies. Procurement deserves that sort of uh, importance in all organizations at scale, where companies are able to partner with them very closely to drive new operational initiatives. We have seen this now across happening globally, and now starting in India and Asia as a trend. Procol has contributed in some of these ways as well. We have seen companies taking that leadership position. Uh, but overall, as with everyone's views, I think, like Tarun said, it's going to be completely autonomous. I Manmeet said it's going to be mixed. I think the future will depict itself. But as we see with all technologies in the world, you can't. It's only if you're working with hundreds of companies you can predict it, because that's where you're making the change. Internally, each organization is trying to function the best, but there are many leaders across procurement who are taking this step one by one in taking the technology forward and making that future happen. So it's uh, not just any one person, but the community that is leading the change of the pack here. They are sort of coming together to introduce new technologies to make sure procurement becomes the future and more strategic in the future rather than just a tactical function. And that shift is going to be major, where companies see procurement driving in revenue growth also. And we see that happening, right? Procurement adds significant value in all sorts of value chains. And like Manmeen and Shoms mentioned, like these procurement and sales are the only two functions to drive innovation with their customer partners or vendor partners. So I think more companies will utilize those networks to innovate faster and more global.
Yeah, there's a question for Tarun. What are the important parameters to be considered to decide whether a technology like blockchain is required in a particular organization?
I think I would say that it's not about what the technology is all about. It's all about what the technology enables. Does it solve a problem that you have which you haven't been able to solve, or you haven't been able to solve to the extent that you wanted? Right. For the example, the example that I gave on the bill of lading and the shipping, I think this was a known problem. Lots of people were facing this. We were facing it for sure, and we didn't find any way to address it. And now blockchain has done that, right? So as a technology, it could enable a lots of other things as well. But for me, this is the problem that it has it has solved to a very large extent, and it's going to do that for in different things like we talked about in terms of traceability, etc. So I would not bet so much on what technology can do. I think I'll bet much more on how it can enable some of the things that we want to deliver. If that makes sense.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I hope Subhashish finds that interesting. Meanwhile, there's a question from Satyan Deshpande. He says, in future, can we see procurement function to be fully automated with zero human interventions? If yes, how will negotiation skills and neural skills be replaced by digitalization? Would anyone like to take that up?
I can take that. And,
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I've seen
Go
this
ahead,
trend. Just quickly, I've seen bots coming in for negotiations. I've seen companies now training their bots for negotiations. There are many functions that are individually being automated across the procurement and sourcing cycle, right? And eventually, these all bots will come together, and there is high probability of autonomy across your procurement and sourcing. I don't see it happening in the next 5 years fully, but it will happen. It's just we don't know when or how fast the transformation can make the change.
Let me just add to that. So first of all, I think a large part of what procurement does can be automated even today. However, the one thing that I would like to share with everybody who's young or old and talks automation and digitization is that automation and digitization is like the wheel of a car. Okay, it's just a wheel of the car. The car itself is the Ferrari. It still needs to be designed. So therefore, the person who writes the software or does the automation is far less relevant than the person who identifies the need of automation and how it can be applied, how scenario planning will emanate. The human element in relationship management, the fact that Shomnath, calls his suppliers as family, like we all do treat them like family, that touch, that extra bit, the game changer, the 1 degree extra is always the human element. It's never going to go out of procurement ever. It cannot. Yes, there are areas in which automation can perform better than humans can, probably in terms of predictive analysis and timing the market, which is far more important than you save 2%, 3% on negotiation. The volatility in the market is 20 to 30%. Getting the market right in commodities is far more important than negotiating with the supplier. And that's where that collaborative element along with this artificial intelligence predictive analysis can be a game changer for procurement to drive more efficiency for the organization. So we have to be selective about the choice of where to put automation, how to deploy it, and what are the human elements that go into it. In the end scenario, the black swan events will happen every 25 days from here onwards, not every 25 years. The AI will not be able to do that entire scenario planning and give that empathetic call to support your supplier or seek support from them. The bot will never do it. I mean, just try it. Just try calling your Citibank or ANZ Brindleys. Yeah, Shomnath, go ahead. Please step in.
You're on mute, sir.
Okay, so basically, I'll give you a live use case here. We conduct reverse auctions, very common. Everyone conducts reverse auctions, right? And in our reverse auction, we have a very clear caveat that management reserves the right to accept L1 prices or not, right? Whether we buy after the price discovery has been done. So the reverse auction and the digitization piece thereof is a live example of how it can help you. तो क्या होता था पहले, अगर उसी सेट ऑफ वेंडर्स के साथ अगर मेरे को 27 वेंडर्स के साथ बैठना पड़ता और अलग अलग निगोशिएट करके उनको एक लेवल पे लाना पड़ता, it would have taken a lot of effort. That effort, the reverse auction engine or that digitization piece has taken care of. But now that I've through this, I have discovered L1, L2, L3. Then I put what we call dal pe tadka, and that tadka can always come from the human element. That one-on-one negotiation and instigating competition between L1 and L3 and making sure that you get even a lower price is what the human touch is all about. It's what a robot can never replace. Also, I would urge many of my young colleagues in this forum to read up about procurement psychology. It's something which has been of great interest to me over the last few years. And since, yes, we are the interface of the company and we deal with a lot of people, basic psychology and learning a little bit about NLP always helps. And so, I have these bright young kids who joined me, IIM, IIT, IIMs, with a lot of knowledge, but handling Mr. Venkataraman from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, 74-year-old entrepreneur who has created a unique flavor, very different animal. So if you tell him Venkataraman, where is the flavor? The PO was given to you 1 month back. Where is the delivery? Boss, I can assure you, Venkataraman is not going to deliver. He's going to shut down his plant, but he will not deliver that flavor to ITC. Yeah. So you need to understand what makes Venkataraman tick. And for beginning, for starters, please start by calling him Mr. Venkataraman, right? So yeah, bots can do a lot, but there are still a lot of things which humans need to do. So at least my generation, we are in business. I don't know about Gaurav's generation. Maybe he will digitize himself out of business.
Anyone else would like to come in here? I think we are at the end of the allotted time that we have. Does anyone have any insights to offer? Or then we will sum up.
I think the key takeaway, even if you're a procurement professional or not a procurement professional and attending this webinar, I think it would have given you a perspective that how procurement contributes to the overall business agenda. And even if you're in a supply chain function and looking for a career in procurement, I believe it's a very good function for you to have a cross-functional experience in terms of legal, finance, operations within supply chain, and as well as digital, as we spoke about. So from any career advancement point of view, if you're looking at a procurement as understanding and a knowledgeable function, I think it is a very good function to be in. Yeah.
Thank you, Archana. To sum up what we discussed today, procurement has led the way out of a crisis before. We'll do it again. But success means rethinking every aspect of the business. Remember, we were speaking earlier on also how the first wave and second wave, which hardly was separated by 3 to 4 months, the entire behavior and the entire response is vastly different. And therefore, to have a templatized version is not that easy. We need people still who will make those empathetic calls. We need people who still will make those specific interventions. But for procurement to lead the way, companies will have to reimagine not just what the function does, but also how it operates and which new capabilities that we need. Because at the end of the day, it is the human behind the function which is going to lend the amount of empathy that is needed. And today we are all talking about more than IQ, we talk about EQ, the emotional quotient. And in a world of EQ, where empathy rules, I think we cannot divorce the people and the capability of the people from this. Procurement, as we all discussed, is focusing a lot of its strategic initiatives in improving operational efficiencies. We are doing a lot of things like accelerating adoption of digital technologies. We are adopting analytics in a big way. We are transforming to an agile operating model. We are strengthening supply chain resilience. In fact, over the last 1 year, if you have seen discussions, most of the discussions were in and around agility and resilience, and how procurement as a function could quickly gear up and ensure resilience not only for itself, but to the extended supply chain that it has, entire supply ecosystem, not just looking at itself, but also taking care of the supply. And we had brilliant examples from all the panelists here who mentioned about what their initiatives were to create the resilient supply chain ecosystem or the supplier ecosystem. By proactively making these changes, we can counter not only some of the worst effects of the crisis, but we can also set ourselves up for growth in the future. I thank each one of you. I thank Shom, Archana, Radha, Tarun, and Manmeet and Gaurav for participating in this webinar. I thank Gaurav for associating with us in this webinar series. Over to you, Jason. I thank all of you once again, and I thank all the attendees for having patiently listened to us. Jason, it's over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I think it was interesting hearing all of y'all in terms of directions and strategy for future of procurement, which somebody just rightly said it would not be function. It would be more like a procurement role. So I think it was interesting to hear all of y'all, and I think a very good takeaway for all the attendees here. Thank you very much for sparing time and being here. I would also like to thank all our attendees for being here, and do follow us on social media, ISCM and SCM Pro forum pages, so that you can get updates on our next webinars and forums, and happy learnings. So thank you everybody for being here. Last but not the least, the entire ISCM team for the support and making it happen. Thank you very much. Have a good day ahead.